Tom Olenberg, and all the people at Octavia Books. And I want to say thanks to you, too. You didn't come here tonight because it had anything to do with the movies per se, and you didn't come here because it had anything to do with TV, and you didn't come here tonight because it was a sporting event. You're people of the book. Something else too. This is my very first trip to New Orleans. I love it. You probably think that this is just curry and vapor and blow smoke. It might be, but it's probably not. From the time that we had the descent, I've been here in my imagination because I read these wonderful detective novels by James Lee Burke. I think that some of you know his work, and the rest of you should, because he's just a terrific writer. And ever since I started to read those books about Dave Robichaux and his friend Cletus, I wanted something that they talk about in those books. Two things, actually. I wanted a po' boy sandwich. But what I really wanted was a beignet. I had my first beignet this afternoon at 2 o'clock. And I had my second one at 2:50. You know, when you get older, you say to yourself, you're prepared for disappointment. You look forward to something you've never tried before, and you say, well, it probably won't be that good. You know, this really was that good. I think that when you're waiting in heaven's anteroom, they come through these things. So it's great to be here, and I'm going to talk for a while. And listen, if you see me look at my watch from time to time, don't think that I want to be gone, and don't think I'm like doing my George Bush imitation there. And that debate he had with Bill Clinton. I'm an ex-school teacher, and if I get wound up, I have a tendency to run on too long. I want to talk for a while, I want to read for a while, I want to take some questions, which is usually hilarious. You never know what's going to come out of it. So, I already told you, some of the questions that I'm asked, people ask what scares me. And I already told you, standing out in front of all these people scared me. But everything scares me. Snakes, spiders, elevators. I'm the guy in the elevator who always says, did you feel bad? And even if I don't feel anything, it's really a good thing to get conversation started. But I was researching some book a little while ago, and I came across some figures from the National Insurance Agency. And one of the things that I noticed was they were talking about public events. And apparently, you know, these actuarial people take everything into account. And one of the things that they take into account are statistics on how many people who come to events like this one who leave their cars unlocked. 1 in 50. Which means that in this audience tonight there are probably 24 people whose cars are unlocked, and I'm not going to say that a psychopath with a knife, a long, sharp knife, totally over the moon on crank, nothing mellow like ecstasy, one of those nasty ones, makes you feel angry. Now, I'm not going to say anybody like that is in the back of someone's car for tonight, but it could actually happen. And I wouldn't want to get a look in the rearview mirror and see this white face. This NIA also says that 1 in every 200 people who go to public events lock their houses. So it's possible that somebody out here who locked their car, I'm not going to say either that a psychopath will in your house, but if they do, they gravitate to the bathroom. They always do that, and you might have one of those. It's the shower they go into. I've seen psycho, you've seen psycho, they've seen psycho. You might have one of those shower stalls that has like the transparent or translucent curtain. Then they go behind the door. And we can laugh about this now because we're together and the lights are on. But at some point tonight, you'll be alone. You'll be in the dark. And then you're alone. All this stuff is funny until it happens to you. People ask me what it's like to be a famous writer. And I can tell you that it's a very uncomfortable thing to be a famous writer. I'm a Red Sox fan, and a couple of years ago, and I like the New Orleans Saints. Not as well as but not quite as well as I like the New England Patriots. Years ago, my son said to me that he was tired of this people coming up and saying, "Can I have your autograph?" or "Are you Stephen King?" when they know God am well. I answered. So he had given me these flip-on sunglasses, and I grow a mustache as well. And I went in, this little 8-year-old kid says, "Look, Ma, it's Stephen King in sunglasses." But we're actually supposed to be secret agents, you know. We're supposed to be kind of like stealth guys, fly under the radar guys. We're supposed to be looking at what you do so that we can reproduce it in prose. And it's very strange to get that recognition. The first time that it ever happened to me, in the old days, there used to be these things called newspapers. You probably, a lot of you younger people don't remember newspapers, but they were these things that boys brought them to your house and threw them on your porch. But they used to sponsor writers, and publishers would put together these tours where they would take 2 or 3 different writers and they would go around to a number of different cities. And I got on one of these tours. I just written my 3rd novel. It's called The Shining. You guys are great. At the Q&A, somebody will say, "Play the reverb." I forgot what the hell I was talking about.
Newspaper.
I'm having a Rick Perry moment. Yeah, I can remember my first year too. So I was on a tour with a writer named Jerzy Kosinski, who's now passed on, and Kitty Kelly, who just written a tell-all book about Frank Sinatra. And we went around to, you know, mid-level cities like Cleveland and Kansas City, places like that. Not first-class towns like New Orleans. But the idea behind this was you were supposed to scarf all the media that you possibly could. And then you went to dinner. The newspaper would put on a dinner where Jerzy Kosinski used to say they serve beige food. It's always rubber chicken or rubber fish. So we were doing Pittsburgh, and we did AM Pittsburgh, and we did midday Pittsburgh, where you're between the Karate Kids, the 10-year-olds, and the celebrity chef who's making something, and then you come on and you get 5 minutes and you talk about your book, and the bottom line is always the same, at your bookstore now. So we did all that, and then we went to the dinner, and I got Montezuma's Revenge. It's hard to put this delicately, but basically everything either went out of the ejection chute or somewhere else. And I felt really terrible. The restaurant was at the top of something that was called the Incline, and there was no way down until the thing was over. And I had to run to the restroom, which was this beautiful Babylonian chamber with, I'm not kidding you, it had marble floors and it had columns. It had one of those washroom attendants, you know, it's the law that they have to be 100 years old. Just these little tiny, wizened, shriveled up guys who've got a towel and they've got to change things. The only thing that this beautiful, splendid bathroom didn't have were doors on the stalls. I have no idea why, but I was beyond caring. I rushed in there, and it was really sort of the low point of the tour for me. There I was, in the bathroom. I was missing my wife, I was missing my kids. I just felt that I could go no lower. Until the washroom attendant turned toward me and his old eyes lit up. And he said, "Aren't you Stephen King?" He said, "I saw you on AM Pittsburgh." And I said, "Yes, I was Stephen King." And then he takes a pad. I'll tell you what, that's the only shithouse autograph I ever gave. The other thing that happens if you're a writer is that it's a kind of a quasi-fame. You're more famous for your name than you are for your face, no matter how many morning shows that you do. So a lot of times people will kind of recognize me. They know that they're seeing somebody that they should know. And in those cases, most cases, people will walk up to me and say, "Aren't you Steven Spielberg?" And I say, "Yes." And they tell me how much they like Jaws. And I tell them how much I enjoy those pictures myself. They sign the autographs if they want. I wound up to try and make people happy. When I was a kid, my mother used to say, "Stephen, if you were a girl, you'd always be pregnant." I didn't talk until I was 3, and after that, my grandfather used to say, "Stevie opens his mouth and all his guts fall out." The first time that I was ever recognized at all, I was in Nathan's Hot Dogs in New York. I stopped in to get a hot dog, and I'm chowing on the hot dog, and I looked through the pass-through to the kitchen, and the cook's looking at me, and he sees me looking at him, and then he's like that, and he's cooking. This is about 30 years ago, when I was actually, you know, I had dark hair, and I had a big beard with no gray in it. And I look back and he's looking at me. Finally, I think to myself, this guy recognized me, and he's going to come out and ask for an autograph. So he did come out, and he said, "Aren't you Francis Ford Coppola?" That's the wonderful world of fame. So, and then people would say, "Where do you get your ideas?" And that's the poser. if you guys have got the microphones and stuff, if anybody has that question, pass it on. I used to tell people, because I didn't know what else to say, that I got them in Utica, New York. There was a little used idea shop there. I needed one. But they come from different places, and with this particular book, 11/22/63, at bookstores everywhere. They make wonderful Christmas presents. Something in there for the whole family. It's a funny thing, but when the manuscript went to the publisher, there's this funny cutoff point around the age of, well, let's say anybody born after 1958. They have a tendency to look at that date, 11/22/63, and not recognize it, not know what it means. Although, if you ask them, what does 9/11 mean to you? Immediately they know. But for people from my generation, we're baby boomers who now barely pop. But for us, that was our 9/11. And I was 17 years old, had been 17 years old for 2 months, and we were in the Eastern Time Zone, and Kennedy was shot in Dallas in the Central Time Zone. We got out of school at 1:30, right around the time that Lee Harvey Oswald was putting a bullet in JFK's head. And we didn't know when we left school. A lot of people, anybody who's beyond a certain age can tell you. Let me see a show of hands. Can you remember where you were when you heard? Yeah, about, I'd say almost over half the audience. So we were on our way home, the radio was on. I lived in a little town, and there was a guy that took about 7 of us back and forth, and he had the radio on. We didn't know what to say, but my mother, who raised my brother and I, came from a family of lifelong Republicans. And when I say lifelong Republicans, I mean, let me put it this way. My wife earned me better. We've been married 41 years. And really, a lot of the thanks go to her. But the fact is, she was a lifelong Democrat. And if I hadn't actually found a way to shift my political allegiances from, let's say, Nixon to Kennedy, that sort of thing, the marriage would have lasted about 40 more months. But first time I could vote was 1968, and I voted for Richard Nixon because he said he was going to get us out of Vietnam, and he had a plan to get us out of Vietnam. My wife still laughs about that. Somebody comes in and we start talking politics. It really doesn't matter what it is. We could be talking about Obama, we could be talking about, you know, anybody that's running for anything, city council. And Kathy will find a way to say, well, in 1968, Steve voted for Richard Nixon.